Hi everyone, and Happy New Year 2025. This is the K8s-Infra meetings, and we're January 15. As a reminder, this meeting is under the code of conduct, so please be excellent to each other. And this recording will be published on YouTube later. So, because let's say, we started the recording late, we're gonna skip cost analysis and intro and just focus on the open discussion. So I wanted to do 3H, but I don't think we're gonna have the time for it. So I will maybe push that to next meeting, which means we should like go to the change meeting time.
Yeah, we should resume. Mohammed was discussing some things when we interrupted to start the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's time we change the meeting. This is a long conversation. We'd never got around to doing it yeah. I am UTC plus 3 now, so it's very late over here. Marco is what, UTC plus 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken. Arno and Mario also plus 1. So it's very late for us here. So I would love to put this slot around the same time as the SIG testing time. That's reasonable. Both US friendly and Europe friendly, so too late. So let's try and do that sometime in February, please.
Okay, do we want to do that? Do we want to do a doodle for it, or do we like just like
Actually, let's bundle the whole thing together. Let's see, we have a new mailing list. We also have an updated meeting slot. And there we go. We'll see everybody in February.
okay, so new mailing list, doodle, we like this on the timeline. In
Ben,
that
you're on
order.
mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry. The SIG, if something like 10 Pacific works for the leads, that's a very typical Kubernetes meeting time. I think we could just do it without making a big deal about it if that's what you all want. We'll just need to update it everywhere.
As European, I want to get in bed before 8 p.m.
Oh, it's perfect. And we'll have the meeting at 7 p.m.
Yeah. So I think that's the general idea. Now, how this is affecting PST, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I think in order, mailing links migration, doodle, so we basically get feedback, or we can like send them a random invite that convenient for Europeans and other people in Europe and Asia and people in PST.
No,
Just
no,
have to
no,
look.
Arno, don't overthink it. The infra is
Yeah,
a small group of people, so like people
yeah,
will
for
come
now.
to us. So no, it'll always be a small group, right? And when there's something urgent, people will make time and join the slot that we've advertised, which is a reasonable slot because most SIGs meet around that slot, Tuesday to Thursday. So yeah.
Yeah, if we keep it on this schedule, then I'm looking and I don't think we can check the community calendar actually to be the most complete, but I think that will work. If we want to be real, Europe friendly pioneers, we can stop scheduling it in a US time zone where daylight savings time changes it, but that might cause some exciting conflicts later when the other meeting times move. As I
It's
think
a
almost
2 week
all
gap.
meetings
It's
are
not the end of the world.
I think almost all meetings are actually on the calendar in Pacific, so all the other SIG meetings are gonna move.
Okay, so yeah, let's migrate the mailing list and send a doodle. And in the doodle, we can make suggestion towards European time zone, and we'll see what's happening.
So some weeks there's a SIG node CI group 10 to 11. This my local time, so Pacific. But it looks like that's it.
Also, we may not have the same day. That's also one thing to think about is basically people might prefer Tuesday or Thursday for the meeting. That's why I'm saying we should just have a
Yeah, the thing
doodle
is,
and we get a vote.
Well,
Tuesday's unavailable at that time.
yeah,
Testing and release alternate.
The thing about moving days is that really increases that we conflict with the other SIGs, especially if we're picking an earlier time slot. There's a lot of Tuesday SIG meetings.
Yeah, also
And if we do,
Thursday is also a lot of SIG meetings at the 7 p.m. Or
yeah,
for me,
and if
it would be 7 p.m. So yeah.
if we move it to a Monday or Friday, there's a lot higher chance that people are out on holiday. So I
Okay,
think we should stick to Wednesday.
Okay, so through the doodle, we just collect timelines, but we keep the same day.
+1. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
The doodle
I'm
makes
pretty happy
sense.
just doing something that works for the the leads collectively. It's hard to do this like genuinely fairly. And someone commented, Marco commented, usually these doodle things don't get many responses, so it really skews the result. The overlap between who actually does the doodle and who goes to the meetings is subsequently is not great.
Yeah.
We can always change it again as well if we find that if the folks are raising a problem with it. We have people raising a problem right now. It's very late for Europe, so let's move it earlier and just start with that. And because it's already a lot of process to do the update.
Okay, it's the same day, another hour, right?
Yeah, I think same day 6 p.m. is great. We're not conflicting with the most important SIGs for us, which is release and testing. And everybody else, they don't really collide with our work streams. So we should be fine.
Well, if you look at today on the community calendar, if we had done that, we would only conflict with Signode CI group, which has some overlap, but that's not bad.
I think Node CI alternates, right? It's weekly, right? So it's fine. It's all right.
No,
Yeah.
they don't alternate. It's mostly the same hour, same day.
No, but it's weekly. So
Yeah, it's every
if
week,
we're
so it's
going
fine.
bi-weekly, we only conflict every other week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so maybe we can follow up on Slack about this if I forget. Okay, next. I think we cover all of this.
I forgot something. The communications for the registry deprecations, I'm working on it. I will get it done ASAP. We have just a little bit over 2 months to get the work done. First preference is use the new registries. If you can't make the deadline, we will run a script on your staging project that will take care of the migration for you. That's effectively what I'm going to communicate.
I think we also need to communicate that we no longer have the possibility to create GCR repo. So there's going to be like a mix between GCR and artifact registry.
Oh yeah, there will be, but that's a short-term thing because we're going to migrate these projects. We just want to make sure that we, first of all, get the migration that Google demands you, well, effectively demand Google to get a specific thing done in the next 2 months. After that's done, next step is that approach is not deprecated. It is a new approach. We are gonna onboard you on this approach, all right, and we're gonna do this and this and this change. All right, please collaborate with us, and we'll get it done.
Okay. Yeah. I think
the other thing is the docs are also out of date, which is the other annoying thing. Which I need to fix as well. But yeah, I'll get that all sorted out.
Okay. So yeah, just share the draft with like put the doc on Slack and
yeah, I'll draft it up first before I send it anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, Mohammed, once you're done, either ping me or ping anyone in the comms channel, so then we can basically blast out and also help you with some comms.
It's a mostly maintainer facing communication. So
yeah, we also have. I mean, we also have maintainer-facing communication channels, right?
perfect, perfect. Yeah, I'll ping SIG comms. Well, you the Sparta
Yeah.
team to sort it out. Cool, sounds good.
Okay, I'm just going over what I'm saying. So, Mario, the maintainer tool repo.
Yeah, this came up today in the ContribX bi-weekly meeting. So Justin came over and proposed that we create like a repository for all of those small testing tools, non-existing tool, not really just tested out tools, experimental tools that are mainly maintainer focused. And the idea is that we have a repository in under the stewardship of ContribX that is basically collecting those features, flagging them, or collecting those tools, and is marking them as experimental, so that they are only internally used. For example, a lot of those just from DIMS and stuff like this, so that we just have a central point. And if it is in a broader usage, for example, like a tool that is watching the owner's files for linting and stuff like this, then it will be moved out of this repositories. And the question from ContribX was if SIG-Infra, or if SIG-Infra maintains something similar, so that we don't do something parallel.
It wouldn't be under K8s-Infra, it would be under SIG testing, and we do this. There's a maintainers repo actually under Kubernetes SIGs that has some related tooling. And then for like test type tools and stuff, I mean, that's pretty clearly SIG testing. And we in the test info repo, we have an experimental directory where people create like prototype stuff, like kind used to live there. And then when things are less experimental, we usually spin it out into like its own repo at this point. We don't throw everything in there, but we usually kind of incubate small tools in test infra experiment. And there's all kinds of stuff in there. And we usually just like people just like create a directory because it's also a lot less overhead, right, than making a repo. So you can
exactly.
like make a directory, put owners in it, and we've been pretty lax about what's in there. We really should actually clean up some of it again. There's like old stuff that's unused. Though I think it also really depends on the nature of the tool. You kept mentioning like test tools, and I'm like, we do that. If it's something else entirely, then that might be different.
Yeah, I mean the example that Justin brought up, and he could not join to. He's here.
He's here.
Justin can also talk for himself.
Yeah.
Why do I?
I mean, there are lots of There are lots of ideas. Arno is also my. Arno and I have been discussing this as well. One thing was like a tool to create a draft PR review. For like, so if you're always commenting the same things as a maintainer, maybe that could be automated for you. Tools to bump versions when Dependabot fails. Tools to do releases if you don't want to use whatever it is, whatever the flavor of the day is. Like, we have a bunch of scripts in various places, and it felt like I didn't know about Kubernetes SIG's maintainers. That's interesting.
We also,
yeah,
we used to have. I'm trying to find it. We had a repo that like SIG testing and release folks owned a lot. I think it was actually owned under release. I can't remember the exact name, but it was like repo infra, repo tools, something like that. That had like releasing scripts and stuff. So I think idea, but I think it also really depends on the type of tool, right? Like if you're talking about something that's proposing GitHub comments, then that might actually live under ContribX. It hasn't historically. Most of them got implemented in testing, and then we've been extremely deferential to ContribX folks about like anything that affects the workflow. So you'll see like automated robot commenters living either in the prow repo or in the test info repo usually, but then like if we're making any notable change to the behavior, we're talking to ContribX versus like if it's like a bug fix or something, then it's usually just like SIG testing reviewing. But I don't see any reason like that's just kind of historical, because it was kind of the breakdown between the like contributor facing expectations versus the like technical bits. But I mean, there's no reason we couldn't have mobix under contravex. But
I mean,
I think if it's like test tools or releasing tools, then I think testing or infra probably or release probably want to be at least like have a chance at it for but for like GitHub AI comments or something, then I don't think it would be SIG K8s-Infra either. I mean, we're just charged with providing the resources. The only infrastructure that SIG K8s-Infra actually implements is either in service of like automating providing infrastructure, or specifically CDN we've kind of taken on as like this doesn't really neatly fit under other SIGs, and it does require some amount of tooling and not just using off the shelf to like do our multi-cloud hosting. Everything else though, we don't typically like SIG K8s-Infra doesn't own tools. We just provide the like cloud credits.
Yeah, the whole topic basically also came up that it's like stuff that gets built or got built in an experimental stage and is like not yet completely used would reside there, and then eventually if it is used on a broader base and it has an ownership decided, then it would move out of this repository. I guess the main thing is that we just want to have like someone caring about this collection thing and not maintaining it, but keeping an eye on it. So like I mean, for example, like a working group, has a goal that solves it, and then the working group should dissolve or become a SIG eventually, right? So that we have like some kind of expiration date of those scripts, that they either get removed or are graduate to a point where they have someone that is taking care of them.
I will say if it's just a script and it's clearly in an experiment place and documented as an experiment, we haven't really felt like we have to push hard to like remove them. If it turns out someone's depending on them and it's literally in a directory called experiment with a doc file that says it's experimental, I just don't have sympathy for you. I'm sorry, we couldn't have been more clear about that. And I don't want to shoot any repo, but I do want to point out that if you want to speed run this, depending on exactly what you're talking about, we've been hosting a bunch of those in that experiment directory and test infra, and that might actually be a good place to just like if you have something you're hacking on that's like a GitHub workflow automation, just throw it in there and add. Like if you look, all of the folders in there typically have their own owners files for like someone was building something. We're like, cool, just go nuts. Like here's your folder. Add yourself, PR yourself into owners and prototype whatever. And then when a few of them have matured, they've either lifted out inside of that repo when we still didn't feel like splitting them out, like Go Fridge, or some of the other like tools like Kind have like filtered out of that repo. Because we definitely don't want test infra to just be a mono repo for all tools, but we have used it for like small hacky bits that we still need that are never going to get like really turned into their own project, like the images, or for this is still a prototype that is kind of our clearinghouse for that. And we've moved almost all that kind of stuff in that experiment folder so that it's super explicit that like these are just prototypes.
I mean, at least from my perspective, I don't know what Arno thinks. Like it seems to meet our needs if we can as long as we can put things in there that aren't like strictly related to test infra. Like why don't we put it under experiment, we can even create experimental maintainer tools under that experiment and sort of see if there is see if it works, right? See if it becomes annoying to test infra.
I think it probably depends on the exact kind of tool, right? Because if it's like a releasing tool, then I mean that's fine, but you might eventually want to like talk to SIG release or something. But if it's like auto comment or something, then it might be fine to just be there until it's more mature, and then we have a discussion about, okay, now we want to make a separate repo for this as like a whole tool. Who's the sponsoring SIG then? Like, is it still, like I said, also almost all the GitHub automation lives in SIG testing right now, and I think that's in the charter, but like it has always been like other things like the CI where it really overlaps with SIG K8s-Infra. the GitHub automation really overlaps with like release and contracts, and so we're usually just kind of talking to them. So far, I think that's been fine, but yeah, I mean, I could see where like if it becomes a mature tool, maybe it becomes its own contracts repo or release repo or something. But I don't think in it, I don't think anybody will be upset or surprised if you throw it in there. If it's something related to like owners files, then it might make sense to make an experiment directory in the maintainers repo or something. I think the other thing that I would point out is that I think it's a really good idea to have this in a separate repo, and TestInfra has done this historically. First, because the other thing I've noticed is that like once you spin out a tool, you don't want to put a ton of this kind of stuff in a really purposeful repo because it just kind of like bloats Git. But TestInfra is like that's what it has been. And so you're welcome to start there if you want. But I would also, if that's not working out, I would be happy to +1 something else. But I do not think SIG K8s-Infra should own it.
Yeah.
No, we just wanted to make sure that SIG K8s-Infra does not do something similar. So that's the whole point why I came in.
No, we definitely not doing anything like that. I mean, we have a few of our own utilities, but SIG K8s-Infra on the whole avoids having a lot of code because we have a small number of people and a lot of things to keep running. And because there are other SIGs that already do this, like testing and release, and the scope is already
there's
kind of enormous.
but basically ownership here. K8s-Infra can't own this, and maybe we should just talk to Contrabas to basically try to have a sub project for and see it should be adapted.
Again, I think depending on the project, you should, I mean, like steering hat that may fall under one of a couple of the, like release and contracts and testing have typically worked pretty close, and there's a lot of stuff that like it kind of floats around which one it is.
But I mean, release processes might be out of scope for the moment. That's why we basically, and testing itself is not necessarily in scope because I think the tool is about basically improve the maintainer experience without necessarily touch the CI. That's why it's like we want to scope that to just basically make sure.
But again, I'm pointing out they aren't like, so for example, the label syncer or like the org automation, like those projects are basically a collaboration with Contrabex and testing, but usually the code has been in testing because we've had more code reviewers. And we have a bunch of related tooling because like the CI itself also kind of cross those boundaries, right? Like there's parts of the CI that isn't really CI, it's GitHub automation, and we don't typically change those without review from like both SIGs. Anyhow, my point being, if you have like more specific, if you have like a project, then that's when we're like reviewing, wait a minute, who does this go under? But if it's just an experiment, I don't think it matters that much. If it's a prototype, I think just about any SIG could sponsor that. If you get to the point where it's like, this is a tool we're going to be doing long term, then we probably look at the specific tool, and it will almost certainly fall under one of testing, Contrabex, or release, because that's where pretty much all that is.
Okay, so I think we should bring one of the technical questions we have should be with SIG testing. And there's like one specific question we basically want to explore with Prow. So yeah, I'm gonna bring that subject to SIG testing.
In the meantime, if you have like a prototype that you're working on, just send me a PR to make a directory if you want. And
okay,
that's easy.
Okay, because we have like 40 minutes left, I'm gonna speed up. Like I see Head as a subject about wind down Equinix metal. Answer that K8s-Infra is not really affected because we only have like one instance where we run code search. We start to basically work on the migration of it. We almost closed. I think by end of 2025, we should be fine. But I do know one project that might be affected by this, but not under K8s-Infra.
Okay, yeah, there's a whole bunch of CNCF projects that are not K8s-Infra that are affected. I just wanted to throw my hand up and say I'm still at Equinix, and if any of you run across any projects that are affected, I'm a good vector for questions.
Okay.
Thank you. I also
I-
appreciate the way this is being handled. We're getting a lot. It feels like we're getting a lot of room to get ahead of this. So thank you.
I'm trying to carve out as much time as I possibly can so that no one hates me when the year is over.
I think we
And
need to nudge Dims about the code search instance. Like the project won't grind to a halt without it, but it
Sure.
would be pretty annoying. And I think there was an effort to move it to run within one of our like GCP clusters,
I
but
think
that
it kind of got
stalled
halfway
out.
there. Yeah, I think it got kind of halfway there. So
Yeah.
because of the performance, if I remember right. So
Yeah. There's a performance issue when we run the
Okay.
search, the indexation on GK for some reason. So we need to tweak. We need to tweak the
Maybe
workflow to make
Yeah.
it work.
I'll
But
flag
faster
that
disk
Dim.
or something.
I'll flag down Nim separately from this group and just make sure that Dims knows that I'm here and we can. This is part of 100 or so conversations I'm having, so I'm trying to get January off to a good start.
Ed, I have one question because I
Sure.
have conflicting. I heard conflicting dates. Someone said to me today, end of February. Which February? This year or next year?
So the reason for conflicting dates is that we have not yet sent out the official approved by legal end of thing message yet. That's currently scheduled for next Thursday or Friday. Some people will get a short date, some people will get a long date, and some people will get an indefinite date that says basically, Ed is your guy, call him and talk through it. And I'm still working through the budget process for having finance understand that that there is a process and that we're working our way through it. So negotiations are underway, but the general gist of it is the faster that you have an alternative, the happier that you will be. Just in general, like
Okay.
don't stall for a year.
Yeah.
I'll give you the time you need, but don't stall.
So just for the notes, February 2025. Like we don't want to stall for that, but like that there's a hard.
No, the announced hard date for the end of everything is Q2 2026.
Okay.
That's the hard date. That's like the machine stops.
Okay.
But the real date is going to be project specific because of budgets. So there will be individual communications with folks.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much.
We have 10 minutes left, so we need to speed up. Really sorry. So
Okay.
Ben, document CI.
Yeah. This is really quick. We've wound up with a couple of different clusters that you can run CI on, and we had some efforts where we like push people towards one or the other. But at this point, people have recently, a couple times, I've been asked about this sort of thing, and I realized there's nowhere we can point to that actually lists like what are the clusters we have? What are they? Why would you use them? What size machines do they have? Which is pretty important for, say, kind E2E tests that various subprojects are doing, where you want to avoid the noisy neighbor problem, and you want to make sure that like, okay, it's an 8-core machine. I'm just going to ask for like 7.1 cores and not wind up with something else stomping the IO on the host or whatever. That all right now is possible to discover, but only if you know SIG K8s-Infra pretty well and you go digging and you like, it took me a minute to look through the Terraform and figure out like what size machine are we using on EKS and that sort of thing. I think we need to document that. We need to provide a little bit of guidance. I think for visibility, we should probably put it in config jobs, like in the where people are actually writing proud jobs, and just say like, here's a doc that that actually tells you what those are. And we should also link out to any other useful resources like the monitoring dashboards, because I think most people in the project don't know those. And again, I don't know how you would discover them. I forget where they are, and I have to get them from like my browser history. I just start typing and it autocompletes because I can't remember the exact names and stuff. I think we really need to collect we need this document, and this is something that probably just about anyone could contribute to. It is possible to find this info, but we really need to like collect it and document it. And then probably iterate from there on a little bit more, not just here's the info, but here's like some guidance on why you would prefer any particular cluster. Um, Adding new clusters like the AKS one or something. I mean, there's other details there that might need to be out. I saw for AKS, I think we have like workload identity with a Kubernetes service account that you need to use in some cases. That that sort of thing, maybe a separate doc or something. We really need some documentation for this. It's really hard to find this. So, if folks are interested, please take a look at that issue. Um, we should get something going here. It there's like nothing to point people to right now. So if you're not like super familiar, then everything is just cargo culting, and it's very hard to get this sort of thing right. And I also see people really under provisioning RAM all the time. They're doing like 1 gig of RAM per core, and that's super counterproductive because we still pay for the machine, but then their workloads may be going slower because, like Go is limiting itself on allocation, compiling or something pointlessly. Um, so like that sort of thing, we also need to look at the how the nodes are actually running and create some guidance. If
Okay, if that.
Hey, quick question, regarding, capacity and time. Are we talking about static clusters in size, or are we talking about mapping, workloads to, scale up the cluster depending on their needs?
they
Utilize.
auto scale, we require that everybody set resource and limits on jobs, so the clusters will auto scale, but they do have limits. But that's I think that's something that we will deal with. Like if we start seeing that kind of problem, then like K8s-Infra will like work with SIG testing on that. I don't think we want job authors trying to guess about cluster capacity, but they do need to know about the machine sizes
Yeah.
because that
So
affects like you can't ask for more cores the machine has and that sort of thing.
you're right, you're right. But you could specify from the workload specific machine types that you need to perform. And if the cluster doesn't have those machines, but it's still
We
part of the pool, the cluster can obviously that's Carpenter owned, but you can have, from a developer standpoint, the ability to um,
we're not
locate and
doing
scale it
that
on specific nodes.
We're not doing that currently. I'm not sure if we want to because we don't. I haven't yet seen a use case where you need really big nodes. I think we'll cross that bridge if we do. But we have frequently seen a use case where you need a property you can't schedule for like disk IO, and
Yes.
and so then just having the whole node is really the only way to accomplish that.
Okay.
Marco?
Yes, to that point, I would only be careful about what we commit to because, specifically speaking about EKS, I am still a bit worried we are using a bit too large nodes that we never got back to that because it has some insane CPU RAM ratio and much larger than we use on GCP, and I'm not really sure that we really want to keep that, but we actually never had time to fix that, to try to find something that is not as expensive, that is actually doing the job.
That's
And I'm sure this is possible to find. So I'm not really sure we want to document that as I don't know, something fixed.
I think the opposite. You need to document that you don't want to commit to this then, because it is totally possible to discover this information right now. It's just painful, and then people are implicitly depending on it. Like you need to know this info, and you can find it, or you'll find it by like brute force requesting cores that finding a number that will schedule or something. That like we can't pretend that that information is secret, but what we can do is document it. And then if we say, hey, we think that we might move these to, I don't know, be closer between GCP or something, we can put that as a note in this doc that like, don't depend on having 16 cores. Actually, we're thinking about moving towards 8, or don't depend on this ratio. This is what that we're thinking. But we can't stay in the state where we just don't tell people anything and they're making completely uninformed decisions about which cluster to put jobs on and how much resources to use. Like I said, I'm seeing that leading to people doing the opposite, where they're doing like 1-to-1 core to RAM, which is, I mean, that's ridiculous and that's not performant. So maybe, we don't want them depending on this like super high ratio, but if there's a ratio that they can depend on, I mean, we should tell them. Yeah, and even if I mean, if we don't make any changes, at the very least, we need to, we should document the status quo because right now you'll either find it by trying to create jobs and then seeing what actually schedules, or you have to go digging through K8s-Infra, and you can totally find it. It's just annoying and it's a waste of people's time. We should write something down. But I totally hear that like maybe we're not committing the current nodes, in which case, when we have a PR for this, we could just iterate and add a comment about that detail. But that's better than not saying anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We could do that and just mention that this might not be the final, it might change at any point in the future, so folks are aware of that. Speaking of that, other thing that you mentioned, I'm not sure if it is a good idea to have like a unit test for jobs, like if you use some ratio that is too low or too large, we say, okay, yeah, maybe you want to reconsider that. Like if you got one CPU, one RAM, like we say, okay, take at least 2 GB of RAM or something like that.
Yeah, I think if we have more of a commitment, that's a good idea. For now, I think we just want to give people like some guidance and go from there. The other point I would say is that even if we say, oh, we can't commit to this, I mean, if we change the machine type, we're going to break some workloads that are implicitly depending on it. So I think again, we should just tell people what there are. We could put some cautionary warning, but realistically, if we substantially change the machine types, we're going to break workloads, and we'll just have to own that between testing infra. We'll just have to find and fix those, like the ones that are asking for more cores than can possibly schedule now because we changed this machine size. Or we've seen in the past, when Google was heavily running the infra, things like changing the disk there are tests that will be pretty impacted by that, like integration tests that are running an API server. And we also have some room to work with people on other options, like we've been exploring with you know, not depending as heavily on having fast disk and just using more RAM, moving things into TempFS. Like we'll have to work with them on that if we want to change things.
Yeah, this
Well,
is
we have
good.
left. We have 1 minute left, and I want to bring a subject because Justin is here. Like, it's like trying to capture a star. So I think we've been in one of the meeting in December. We discovered that we have a bucket where we store the CNI plugin release, and I think it's expensive because chaos might use that for production deployment. So we need
Oh,
to think about like either migrate or deprecate the bucket and try to walk away from it or figure out a way to do that. So I
yeah.
just think about this, and one option should be basically start promoting a plugin as a
Can we can
artifact.
we stop doing that? I mean, it's not our project. Like this is a third party project that we're like copy pasting and rehosting and making ourselves responsible for users downloading. Can we not just depend on their releases? I think
Yeah,
it's
but
pretty reasonable to say like, hey, if you want to download the standard CNI plugins, you get them from the standard CNI plugins project. It's less work and it takes us off the hook for this. We were looking at what's going on with our bucket spend and have we actually finished with the redirect and things, and we're like, oh, that's actually costing a bit. What's going on here? And it just appears to entirely be like we're just like republishing another CNCF project's tarballs.
yeah, but the real problem is like in order to stop doing that, we need to have like a way to migrate away. We just cannot basically say to people, "Oh, stop doing that." So I think we should like trying to like mitigate the costs
Well,
by
we only have tagged releases. They're available on GitHub. So
yeah, but there's
like you
an
can't
issue
download
with
from those,
the real problem is like there's an issue with like how we have the kids user deploying those Kubernetes environment because
which is
a lot of them deploy them behind a gateway, a NAT gateway on AWS, which means GitHub will see that as like one IP address and rate
Yes,
limit.
and we will rate limit them on registry K8s.io too. I mean, if you want to run a large cluster behind a NAT gateway, that you are asking for that kind of problem, and you probably need to use a proxy or something.
That's a problem, is basically because KOps don't have the capability to deploy from a mirror like
Okay.
so in order
Again,
to
like GKE scale tests are one of the things that we broke when we set a rate limit on our own infrastructure.
yeah.
Having a non-rate limited download endpoint is not a thing that we want to commit to long term. It's not sustainable. And of course, there's always going to be users that want to depend on that. But like, how else are we supposed to keep the cost from ballooning? And right now, the GCS bucket is just a totally unrate limited, download as much as you want, not cost effective endpoint, and there's a ready alternative there. Why do we think that we can outdo GitHub on sustainably hosting things with like greater rate limits?
Because basically it's not about basically say like we are better than GitHub. It's more like trying to make sure we don't break existing environment.
Well, yes. I mean, we'll stop publishing new ones there and we'll transition away from it. I'm suggesting we don't delete the bucket right away, but we should stop like we should stop moving forward with it. Which is what we've done for everything else that we've wound down pretty much. Like case GCRIO is not really broken. It just forwards and we have something else. I would not advocate for like breaking prod, but we should move away from it.
Okay, how we move that without breaking pickle? I think that's
Well,
gonna be the question.
you stop publishing new ones, and
Okay.
then whenever some project adopts new CNI builds, they switch to the upstream releases. And then that means that when users upgrade, they go, "Oh, I'm exceeding GitHub's rate limits," and we go, "Yeah, you should like toss up a mirror or something." Um, and
Okay, so
yeah,
this is the thing is like, let's say
it should be published upstream. We have some other places where we just pull from that. There is an exception to this, by the way. I think that we're still have a package in the deb and RPM for this. But that's like, related to getting it into that packaging system as a dependency of like a kubeatom install. But that's also been a topic where I've been saying we should stop doing that, because you also don't necessarily need them. If you're just like having kubelet or having kubeatom does not imply that you need these binaries. You could be using Cilium or something.
okay, why not? Okay, if that, yeah, I see your hand raised, Justin has his hands raised. We are out of time, so let's say, are we okay to be out of time? I'm fine with that.
Well, you said it's something about the stars aligning. So if people have time, then
Well, I
I'm willing to keep talking to them.
We are fresh out of 2024. We have tons of energy. We have 10
Okay.
energy reserve for the whole year, right?
Cool. Okay. So, um, so why are we not doing the same thing we do with Cryo right now, which is basically publish that and publish to a bucket and serve that from a CDN?
Cryo?
Yeah.
We don't host Cryo.
We host Cryo.
No, we don't. Where are we hosting Cryo? Since when?
In the
Do you mean
packet?
CryCuddle?
No.
Because CryCuddle we stopped publishing. It looked like this, and we moved to GitHub releases. We should not be hosting Cryo. I mean, this is not even that isn't a Kubernetes project either, and it's not a direct dependency of any Kubernetes project.
We are hosting cryo packages.
Oh, right. You're talking about the deb and RPM packages. Yes, I had a
Yeah.
thread about how we should
Yes.
not be doing that.
Okay.
That's a very
So-
recent change, and I raised a pretty big stink about that, because it also Marco is a TL now, but as far as I can tell, this wasn't actually approved by SIG K8s-Infra at the time, and we're eating the CDN cost for a third-party project, which is not good, because it's not, as I explained to the cryo folks, it's not that I care about cryo one way or another. It's that the precedent matters, that we have to have a rule where we can cut it. Otherwise, why do I tell some other project? If Containerd comes to me and wants to start hosting deb packages, are we going to host theirs too? Where does that stop? It should stop with our own projects. We should not be Justin Go with that. You can't. Oh, I was just dealing with the naming thing. I had a meeting yesterday about this. Sorry, in the chat. There's been a whole. Never mind. Anyhow, we need to be able to draw the line somewhere. We've had a similar problem with CI. We made a big push away from being responsible for anyone else's CI. That's almost gone. There's a tiny bit of Containerd and C Advisor, and I've been continuing to follow up on them on like, look, like I understand the synergy between these projects, but we have to be able to say no, we don't host third-party CI because the CI we're hosting is really expensive, and you can get resources from the CNCF as a CNCF project, but like we have resources earmarked for us. Like those GCP credits are for Kubernetes, the Amazon credits are for Kubernetes, and those companies also may provide resources to like CNCF or other projects, but like these were earmarked for us. They should be used for us. We should not be hosting third-party artifacts. But also because hosting artifacts is one of the biggest holes we can dig, where you get into this state of like, oh, we can't break people. So okay, so with this CNI bucket, we're gonna need to leave it around for a long time so that we don't break people, and we're just gonna have to wait for people to upgrade to newer versions of these tools that don't fetch from there. But that's going to take a while, and in the meantime, we don't have cost levers.
Okay.
Which is why we shouldn't be doing Cryo's packages either. If Cryo gets super popular and suddenly this is like eating all of our budget, how do I explain to all of the Kubernetes subprojects that we have to stop running scale tests because we're paying for Cryo downloads and it's not even part of the project? Like, we just don't want to be in that situation. So we should be isolating them. They should be using their own OBS project as well, not just for the cost reasons, but for security reasons. We don't want to have Cryo maintainers owning our releases and vice versa. We don't want to be responsible for their security. We don't want them to be, have access to our sensitive bits, even if there are some overlap. And people that, I mean, it's even within our own K8s-Infra, right? We have every Kubernetes SIG subproject have a separate GCP project where they run their image builds for similar reasons, so that we just minimize the blast radius on these things. We should really not continue with that. We've mostly eliminated this. These projects have their own releasing and things. It is duplicated effort to release again, and it's not there. And yes, we have a precedent with Cryo, but that was not, as far as I can tell, that was not actually discussed in this SIG. And has since been discussed as a follow-up as like that was an accident or a mistake or like unapproved. And so I don't think that's not a reasonable precedent. We want to stop doing it.
Okay, because I want to make sure like we don't have a double standard about how we want to host things inside the infrastructure. So we should like, I think we should like be in agreement. We should stop hosting third party and basically stop republishing stuff we have, because in the past we basically, let's say, not pushing too hard to stop people consuming the infrastructure for other project outside of the K8s ecosystem. I would say K8s project. Justin, are you okay with what we discussed?
Yes, and Cyprian Star actually already added a mirror. It looks like in January 2nd, sadly of this year. So it will start to go down. I don't know whether I was trying to figure out whether we backported that at all, but there's a mirror in there. So that does imply that the upstream has the same SHA and all that. So that is good news.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think what we were looking for when we opened that issue was just, hey, we found a thing that no one's been talking about that's costing a bunch that we should wind down. I don't think there's any like immediate urgency. Our budgets are fine, but like we've been trying to exit that sort of thing long term because it's a liability and it's one that's hard to mitigate, and we already have a lot of it. And
Okay,
there
so
was
how
there was
we-
a lot of random stuff. If you look in like dl.k8s.io, there are even like Googlers pushed like test builds for GKE, and like there's some really strange stuff that we've hosted over time. There's like Etsy, like the Augur tool for etcd has like a release in there. There's like an extremely old etcd release. Kubernetes was super haphazard with this when it wasn't actually being run by the project, but as we've brought things into being run by the project, one of the things we've been doing is saying, hey, we're not hosting CI for this Bazel repo. Stop doing that. Like, go run your own CI. This is for Kubernetes. I don't know who decided this was okay in the past, but like, we need to stop doing this because our own problems are huge and we need to be able to kind of draw some boundaries. And hosting for third parties is a very obvious, clear boundary to draw. And I don't know how else you would do it. Because if we start opening ourselves up to like, oh, but it's a related project, well, that's the whole CNCF landscape, and we're not going to be able to sustain that.
okay,
I'm
cool.
gonna start a follow-up thread about the cryo thing.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
we
I
should
think
figure that out.
just to be sure how we proceed with like make sure we stop hosting third parties, how we want to proceed with this communication, what kind of action we want to do this year, because I'm defining like 2025 as like timeline to take care of this. Do we want to be aggressive and basically say to people in 3 months we stop deleting buckets? Or
No. We don't need to do that. We have the budget right now. It's just if we can switch caps away from it and make sure that no one else is using it, then we can plan to wind down later. I mean, we may not even have to delete it because the traffic should subside, but it'll
Okay.
also be easier for us to decide to delete it if it's like, well, if you're using a current release, it'll be fine. But we don't want to reach for that lever when we don't have to. We're not currently in a situation where we're going to exceed our budget. We have had to do things in the past, like reducing scale testing because we like have to cut the budget right away, but we only do that as a last resort. Like when we shifted the traffic and broke people in some niche situations with Kate's GCRIO, that was because it was, I mean, the cost was currently unsustainable. Our budget is fine right now, but we don't want to see this grow. We want to see it shrink and go away. So I think let's not plan to delete it at all for now. That can just be a back pocket item for later when the traffic is like gone. And we should focus on efforts to make it irrelevant.
Okay. Okay, good. So
Same thing with cryo, by the way. I don't think we should like yank those builds. That would just be awful for everyone. And we can afford it right now. It's just the problem is that these things, the binary downloads and stuff always go up and to the right, unless there's like everyone stops using KOps or something. The usage is just going to go up. So even if we can afford it right now, so, but like we really don't want the blowback of breaking people, especially when we can currently afford it. It's just from sort of like a long-term strategic and a fairness perspective, we don't want to be blowing our budget on publishing third-party resources. I don't want to get into a situation where later this year or next year, it turns out, I don't know, cryo or CNI downloads or something are costing us a lot. And then we have to make a choice then between breaking users and like running our own CI or something. So
yeah.
we just want to get away from that.
Okay, cool. I think we are in agreement. So yeah, let's follow up with that. I'm gonna stop the recording. Where's that thing?